The Olympics have been a mixed bag for China this year, and it's pretty uncomfortable for me to talk about. I know that sounds weird, but let me explain. On one hand, you have a great performance from the Chinese athletes across the board, with world records being smashed and the bar being raised. And I'll be honest, I get pretty proud when I see China do well, especially the swimmers. Being an ex-swimmer myself, that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? I mean, I still swim. It's kind of like saying, being an ex-sleeper myself. It's like I don't sleep anymore. Anyway, what I mean is, being an ex-competitive swimmer myself, to see China smash the world record for the 200-meter relay, I was beaming. It's this weird position I'm in because I'm rooting for China. I want China to do well in the world. I wish nothing but absolute success and happiness for the Chinese people. When I see the medal count go up for China, I actually feel really proud. It's the country I lived in for 10 years, and my heart's still there. I'm refreshing the medal count on Google all the time, and I actually have the Olympics on in the background as I make this video, and I legitimately get excited to see China win. And then there's the other part of me that realizes that the Olympics is just a massive opportunity to gain soft power for the Communist Party of China. The Chinese government likes to steal any opportunity that they can to promote themselves and their style of governance. And that part of me gets really excited when Taiwan wins. Of course, you won't know them as Taiwan in the Olympics, but as Chinese Taipei. This is a slanderous title. The reason that Taiwan, the independent nation of Taiwan, is called Chinese Taipei in the Olympics is because China won't allow them to be recognized as an independent country. They actually claim Taiwan as a part of China, despite Taiwan being an independent country with its own military, with its own democratic government, with its own currency, and with its own allies. It's a real shame, since Taiwan is a beautiful, bustling democracy full of very hospitable and nice people. Not to mention, they have a pretty great human rights record as of recent. Anyway, Taiwan is claimed by a maniacal dictatorship that won't even let them be called by their actual name, Taiwan. So you can imagine during the badminton tournament, I was pretty excited to see Chinese Taipei win. Taiwan. It must be a huge punch in the gut to see your flag go up when you win and it's actually just the Olympic logo because China doesn't allow you to show your own flag. But here, I fixed it for them. Anyway, rooting for the underdog is a little easier when you have Chinese athletes screaming the F word during their match. Seriously, this woman is repeatedly screaming the F word in Chinese on the Olympics live, and then after the fact denying that she did so, and then said that she was saying something else, but her accent was incorrect, so it sounded like the F word. No, she was just screaming the F word. She never did tell us what she meant to say. Oh well, we'll just have to take her word for it. Or like when China's swimmer Sun Yang was caught doping and uttering offensive phrases to rival swimmers. Or like when the Chinese government repeatedly used underage girls in the gymnastics competitions and then lied about their age. Seriously, they did this in 2000 and then again in 2008. I don't know how they thought anyone was gonna believe that these girls were 16, but hey. Don't even bring up the fact that, they actually thought that the girl that they chose to sing the national anthem at the 2008 Olympics was too ugly. I think she looks cute to me, but they thought she was so ugly that they actually replaced her with a girl that couldn't sing, but one that they thought was prettier. Imagine being a little girl told that you were too ugly to sing the national anthem, but still had to sing it behind closed doors as a very pretty girl got to lip sync and claim your voice. Can you imagine what that would do to your mental health? Anyway, apparently they're really good friends now. So there's a happy ending to that story. Anyway, don't even get me started on the behavior of hyper-nationalists who leave thousands of comments and threats against opposing countries' athletes, or teach their children to want to kill all Japanese people.
为啥受不了那个日本人？因为日本人打过我们呀！但是共产党不是把小日本打跑了吗？
For real though, this is something you previously wouldn't see. I mean, we have Chinese athletes literally wearing Chairman Mao badges, the guy responsible for tens of millions of murders and deaths of Chinese people. They are wearing them at the Olympics, when the Olympics specifically says that you're not allowed to wear political symbology. And don't even mention the sports teams outside of the Olympics. I won't even get started on this one. You can come to your own conclusions there.
这个好像感觉还是有点跑之前有点紧张。
Yeah, it's easy to root for the other team with this behavior, but still, I'm rooting for China because the athletes should be separated from politics. But now that I say that, I have to ask myself, can we really do that? Historically, dictatorships and authoritarian governments have placed immense importance on the Olympics. The Nazis did it, the Soviet Union did it, China does it, and if you think about it, at the most base level, it makes sense. Here you have a chance to go in front of the world, who is constantly criticizing you of genocide or forced labor or famine or all these other pesky accusations, usually related to human rights, and then get on stage with your most talented athletes and show the world that you're better than them. Nazi Germany.
At the point of a gun.
The Soviet Union.
One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged.
And now China.
But every single provision in the United Nations Genocide Convention violated by the Chinese government's treatment of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities
are all poster boys for international critique. And rightfully so. I mean, these three systems are responsible for the most innocent lives lost of any political system ever created by man. Famine, war, genocide, you name it. These political systems, both fascism and attempted communism, have cost the lives of over 100 million people. It's kind of a bad look. But imagine you can shed that imagery for a minute and prove to the world that you're better at running or swimming. Then all of a sudden, your tyrannical regime seems a little more palatable, doesn't it? After all, it's just a friendly game of sport, isn't it? And that's the problem. When you give the stage to tyrannical dictatorships and abusers of human rights, you give them an opportunity to be human when they're doing the most dehumanizing things imaginable. Speaking of human rights, there's actually an issue that I've been asked to talk about by you guys so many times, and I simply just haven't talked about it because I'm not really an expert on the topic. However, my buddy Jordan Harbinger, fantastic show. He has an amazing podcast where he interviews people from all walks of life, including well-known people, intellectuals, famous people, actors, you name it. He interviewed David Kilgore about the very topic you've been asking me to talk about, and that is forced organ harvesting by the Chinese Communist Party in China. He actually talked about it with him in detail. It's horrifying stuff, but finally I can actually recommend a place to go check it out and actually learn about the topic in detail from an expert. Go check it out. It's jordanharbinger.com/497. That's because it's episode 497 with David Kilgore. Seriously though, not just that episode, I can heartily recommend you check out Jordan. He's a good friend of mine and everything that he puts out is absolutely solid and fascinating. All links are down below in the pinned comment and in the description. Anyway, this is diametrically opposed to the Western, or more specifically the American kind of attitude of individual success of sports. Yes, you represent the USA in the Olympics, and yes, there's definitely a team aspect in the pride of your nation, but this is your own choice. You go into it on your own volition, and your hard work pays off, and maybe you end up on the team. If you don't win, no one is going to ask you for your citizenship to be revoked and force you into the dark annals of historical failure for your nation. I'm not joking, this is what happens in China and other authoritarian powers. If you fail, you failed the entire nation. Look at Wang Luyao, who suffered a torrent of verbal abuse after finishing in 16th place. This is nothing new. In 1988, a gymnast Li Ning returned home to a flood of criticisms and was even sent a knife blade with a rope in the mail. Also, the way athletes are trained is nothing short of torturous in these regimes, China included. Scouts go into villages and hand-pick children to go to grueling camps where they're stripped of what little freedom they had, all for a chance to represent their brutal dictatorship on world stage. And failure means humiliation, not only for them, but according to the Chinese government, humiliation for the entire nation. The USSR saw the Olympics as a means to display Soviet power. The Games provided an opportunity to show the dominance of the Soviet Union to the world, as well as their own people. Nazi Germany and Yugoslavia had similarly lavish displays at their Olympics, and you can only imagine North Korea would have had a similar display if they were allowed to host the Olympics. Doesn't that sound crazy when I say, if North Korea was allowed to host the Olympics? Keep that in mind when people talk about Beijing 2008 or Beijing 2022. Anyway, China's obsession with the Olympics was felt in 2008 when Beijing wowed the world with their presence. The presentations, the showmanship, this was the moment that the world said, hey, where's China been all this time? This is amazing. I will admit, I was proud of China in that moment. But thinking back on it, I see what the display was actually for. It's for soft power. I won't even get into what they did to prepare for the Olympics with forced demolition of people's houses and moving them and stopping fake terrorist attacks. But anyway, it's an outdated belief that people and countries and organizations will forgive you for your past and current crimes, like the current genocide of the Uyghur population in Xinjiang, and will give you a free pass if you do well at sports. It reeks of Soviet showmanship used to intimidate the West into thinking that their oppressive system is better. It's born of insecurity because it's really hard to sell people on famine and authoritarian control over every aspect of people's lives. It doesn't sound like a good system because it's not. And China needs the Olympics because of its deep insecurity about its own system, just like the Soviet Union did. I appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears of the athletes, but I cannot help but question the motivations of dictatorships in these types of competitions. The Chinese government has turned China into a massive bully, especially under Xi Jinping, current leadership. And they are constantly given a stage to show off and downplay their atrocities and excuse their stifling of freedom of speech and religion. And they're given an even playing field on a global scope, whether it be admission to the WHO or the WTO or the UN and countless others. This simply should not be allowed when the Chinese government doesn't even give its own citizens an even playing field to survive within their own country. Yet we allow a government quickly approaching North Korea levels of freedom and human rights atrocities to host the next Winter Olympics. Do me a favor and wake me up when the world learns from its all too recent past. I'll be waiting.